Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. And today I'm going to do my review of SummerSlam 2005. Starting off the evening, we'll go to our first match of the night. It is Orlando Jordan versus Chris Benoit for the WWE United States Championship. This was a glorified squash match to open up SummerSlam 2005. Benoit was keeping the pace throughout the entire match. Benoit then hits a German suplex on Jordan. Then Benoit ultimately applies his signature crossface on Orlando Jordan. And your winner of the match by submission, and at that time new WWE United States Champion, is Chris Benoit. Hats off to Chris Benoit for getting the win and becoming the new United States Champion. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Edge versus Matt Hardy. It was a good match, back and forth matchup between Edge and Matt Hardy, with Matt Hardy keeping the pace of the match. Edge hits a spear on Matt, sends both of them to the outside. Matt then gets busted wide open from the post. Edge ends up hitting like a springboard move on Matt Hardy to send him into the post, busted Matt Hardy wide open. Referee then sees Matt Hardy, ends up stopping the match, and your winner of the match is Edge. Hats off to Edge for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night as well. It is Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio in a ladder match for the custody of Dominic Mysterio. I thought this was a great match. Back and forth matchup between Guerrero and Mysterio, with Rey keeping the pace of the match. Rey hits a springboard dropkick on Eddie off the ladder. Rey then hits a springboard senton on Eddie. Rey and Eddie both exchange in the middle of the ring. Eddie then hits Rey with the ladder. Eddie then hits a helo on Rey on a ladder. Rey then gets up, hits a back body drop on Eddie off the ladder. Eddie then hits a release powerbomb on Rey on the ladder. Dominic then enters the ring. Dominic then stops Eddie from climbing the ladder. Rey then hits a 619 on Eddie. Rey then hits a springboard leg drop on Eddie as well. Rey then hits a powerbomb on Eddie off the ladder. It looked absolutely brutal. Vicky Guerrero makes her way down to the ring. Vicky tries to stop Eddie and tells him to stop climbing the ladder. Vicky then throws Eddie off the ladder. Rey then climbs the ladder, grabs the briefcase, and your winner of the match is Rey Mysterio. Hats off to Rey Mysterio for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night as well. It is Eugene versus Kurt Angle. I thought it was an okay match. Back and forth matchup between Eugene and Kurt Angle, with Angle keeping the pace of the match. Kurt ends up hitting a German suplex on Eugene. Eugene gets up, hits a rock bottom on Kurt Angle. Eugene then hits a stunner on Kurt Angle, as well as him applying an ankle lock on Angle as well. Angle then breaks the hold. Angle then hits an ankle slam on Eugene, and Angle then applies his ankle lock on Eugene, and your winner of the match by submission is Kurt Angle. Hats off to Kurt Angle for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Randy Orton versus The Undertaker. I thought this was a really good matchup. Back and forth matchup between Orton and Taker, with Taker keeping the pace of the match. Orton hits a devastating power slam on Undertaker in the middle of the ring. Taker then hits a leg drop on Orton off the apron. It looked absolutely brutal. Taker hits his signature old school on Randy Orton. Orton then goes for an RKO, but Undertaker counters it. Taker then hits... Orton then hits a chokeslam on... Undertaker hits a chokeslam on Randy Orton. Randy gets up, hits an RKO, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Randy Orton. Hats off to Randy Orton for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night as well. It is John Cena versus Chris Jericho for the WWE Championship. I thought this was a good matchup. Back and forth matchup between Cena and Jericho. Jericho and Cena both exchange in the middle of the ring. Jericho hits a spinning heel kick on Cena in the middle of the ring. Jericho then was keeping the pace after that. John gets up, hits a springboard leg drop on Chris Jericho. John then goes for an FU on Jericho, but Jericho counters the FU. Jericho and John both exchange again in the middle of the ring. Jericho then applies the walls of Jericho on John Cena. John Cena breaks the hold. Then John hits his signature FU on Chris Jericho, pins him for the 3, and your winner of the match, and at that time, still WWE Champion, is John Cena. Hats off to John Cena for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night as well. It is JBL versus Batista for the World Heavyweight Championship in a no-holds-barred match. I thought this was a relatively good matchup as well. Back and forth matchup between JBL and Batista, with Batista keeping the pace of the match. But Batista ultimately hits his signature Batista bomb on JBL on the steel steps, pins him for the 3, and your winner of the match is Batista. Hats off to Batista for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is the main event of SummerSlam 2005. It is Shawn Michaels versus Hulk Hogan. I thought it was a good match. Back and forth matchup between Shawn Michaels and Hogan, with Shawn keeping the pace of the match. Hogan, though, ultimately hits the big boot on Shawn Michaels, as well as his signature leg drop. Pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Hulk Hogan. A couple of things I'm going to say about SummerSlam 2005, man. It was a solid event from top to bottom. I mean, the glorified squash match that we got from Chris Benoit to open SummerSlam was absolutely awesome, in my honest opinion. Edge versus Matt Hardy, fantastic match. Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio in the ladder match for the custody of Dominic Mysterio was an absolutely phenomenal match, man. It told a great story to, incorporate Dominic Mysterio into this match. And then obviously he's in the ring trying to get Eddie off the ladder so he wouldn't be, Eddie's son. It was a great story to tell, man. And to be honest with you, everybody that was involved in that story did a phenomenal job with it being Ray, Eddie, Dominic. I mean, having Vicky Guerrero involved in this matchup, it was just a great story to tell, and to have the culmination of this storyline lead up to this match, and the ending of this match was just awesome. I mean, the fans went crazy. The fans were chanting Ray. Some fans were chanting Eddie, and Eddie and Ray have had some phenomenal matchups throughout their entire career, man. I mean, from the match they had in WCW Halloween Havoc between Ray and Eddie to this match right here was absolutely legendary. It was a great match, and honestly, probably the match of the night for me on this card for SummerSlam 2005. Shawn Michaels versus Hulk Hogan, the main event. I mean, for what it's worth, a lot of people would say this is probably the best match of the night on this card. But in my honest opinion, man, I had to give it to Eddie versus Ray in that ladder match. I mean, this was a time, too, where Hogan wasn't obviously the same Hulk Hogan that everybody knew from back in the day. And Shawn Michaels, I mean, yeah, Shawn Michaels is a legend. But I also feel like Shawn Michaels was carrying Hogan throughout this entire match and really couldn't give Shawn Michaels a really solid matchup, in my honest opinion. But all in all, I mean, it was a solid event. JBL versus Batista for the World Heavyweight Championship was a solid matchup, man. It was a really good match. Batista, was really, for it being a no-holds-barred match, I mean, back in the day, JBL, just came off as this, I mean, obviously a great heel. I mean, JBL, it really, him being John Bradshaw Layfield and not being regular Bradshaw, being JBL really helped JBL's career. At a point where the Acolytes, obviously the APA, were they were kind of done. Ron Simmons was doing his own thing, had more of a backstage kind of scene with WWE, and JBL still wanted to wrestle. So I mean, he definitely came off as a great heel, and JBL had some really good matchups in for the remainder of his career in WWE. So, and this is just one of them. Batista was an absolute legend when he was World Heavyweight Champion, in my honest opinion. He carried the belt well, and he had a lot of good title defenses with that championship. So, absolutely phenomenal champion. But I had to say that the Eddie versus Ray match was probably the match of the night for me. As far as a rating for SummerSlam 2005, man, I'm going to give it a solid 7 at best, man, because I feel like if I give it a 10, it's a little too high. But at the same time, too, I mean, the Eddie Guerrero-Ray Mysterio match for me is one of the main reasons why this, SummerSlam 2005 is getting a 7 for me. It told a great story, phenomenal matchup. You're not going to get a good match between Eddie and Rey Mysterio, man. It's always going to be a fantastic match from top to bottom. Eugene versus Kurt Angle was a decent matchup as well. Randy Orton versus Undertaker was another really good matchup. And again, it just went with the stigma of, him being the legend killer. It just, gave him more advantage into that character being the legend killer. So it was a phenomenal matchup. JBL versus Batista, again, another really good matchup. So I'm going to have to give SummerSlam 2005 a solid 7, if not 7.5 at best. But this is my review of SummerSlam 2005. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful, and remember, stay classic. Peace.